Hello and welcome to the Xtra Edge, a sports analytics podcast powered by KINEXON. I'm Dave Grendzynski, and today we're talking to Steve Englehart and Tessa Mendoza. Steve is the strength and conditioning coach for men's basketball and the director of sports performance for Olympic sports at the University of Colorado, the home of the Buffaloes, but he's got help there. Tessa is the assistant director of developmental science at Colorado. She works together with Coach Englehart, crunching all the numbers they collect, the sports data and the analytics. Thank you both, first of all, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
So, Coach, you're in your sixth season now as the strength and conditioning coach for men's basketball. Your 11th year overall, and once again, you got the Buffaloes in the thick of the Pac-12 race. And the thing that I noticed, though, is that you've won every game at home except for one, and that's kind of been the theme with your team since you've been there over the years. You guys are super tough to beat at home. And not only that, head coach Tad Boyle, now the winningest head coach in Colorado basketball history. So maybe the data had something to do with it. I don't know, but we're going to find out. Now, Coach, my first question for you is, what led you down this road to using sports data and analytics on a daily basis?
I think we always used analytics, some form or fashion, even, back at University of Hawaii in 2006. I just think it has grown over the years. And I think, we started off with Polar, like I think everybody has, using heart rate and trying to figure out, who's pushing themselves, who needs to be pushed. And the technology just got better and better. And when we saw KINEXON and what it could do for our team, that's when we hopped on and started using it for the analytics and helping the student athletes to evidently do what they want to do, which is play professionally.
And so, Tessa, did you find data, or did sports data find you?
Sports data found me, for sure. That's my role. That's what I've been doing here for 2 years with Colorado. And it's a big part of what we do, in addition to what we do in the weight room and what we do on the court.
And so, Coach, when was the first time, when you look back, when was the first time you really said, okay, this is something we need to implement into our program?
I think it was, when we first got KINEXON, right? It opened up some eyes about, especially when we had a year into it, so we can track what they're doing in the game, especially the guys that are playing versus what they're doing in practice, right? I think there's a base of people out there that thinks KINEXON or any technologies like, hey, this is for minute restrictions. And if you're using it for minute restrictions in college, good luck with that. What we found out was our guys weren't going hard enough sometimes in practice, right? Compared to the games. They were trying to, playing against, the redshirt squad or the walk-on squad, and you're sitting there, you're like, man, they're not even going hard. So when you educated those players of what they needed to do in a game, like they did and like they do in practice, like, hey, you need to go harder in practice because in the game, this is what's happening. I think that's when it evidently took off for us, because we got the players to be involved, we got the players to invest, and evidently it just took off that way.
And Tessa, are you more a math major who's into sports, or did you have a sports background? How did that marriage happen?
I had a kinesiology background, and then I joined that with computer science and data science. So I really tried to find the blend of the two.
And so talk to me about some of the things you're looking at I'm from like an outside perspective looking in. What were some of the things that you noticed or attracted you to your role?
The biggest thing we try and do is paint the whole picture. And what I love about University of Colorado is we have the technology to do that. But for us, it's pulling the KINEXON data with data from our players on their wellness, how they're feeling, hydration data. Our goal is to put all of that together so it can tell one big story. And I think that's what makes it powerful for us.
And Coach, one of the things that we hear a lot, like, it's nice, you can get all of these metrics, right? Hundreds of them, right? But one of the things that seems to be a recurrent theme is that coaches like to try to keep it simple, right? And so we like to talk about what I mean. It's the metrics trifecta. Like what would you say are the top 3 metrics? Like over the years as you've been doing this. Let's talk basketball first. That you think coaches should pay attention to.
Unlike data scientists right here, if I don't keep it simple, the player is just going to go over everybody's heads. That's the coaches and that's the players as well, right? So I look at the top 3 metrics, and it's going to go like number 3 is going to be accumulated load, then high load, and then very high load. I don't care what anybody tells me. I know there's research out there that says the game of basketball is played in an aerobic mode, which is like a zone 2 and 3 of your heart rates, right? And that is BS. Maybe if you look at timeouts, if you look at halftime, if you look at pregame when they're out the bench, then yes. But playing the game of basketball, when the ball is going from baseline to baseline, right? I'm telling you this right now, they're going to be in high and very high. And that's why we track those 2. And they're very, very important. We have some great data on that as well.
And can you do me, just from a layman's terms, can you explain a little bit what that means when you're talking about, accumulated load and high load and zones? And, can you kind of like, if you're going to, how would you explain it to mom, I guess?
This how I actually explained it to her, but she asked me that one day. She saw this little thing that the Buffs did, and I was like, "Hey, mom, it's simple. Accumulated load is just think about walking. You get like a 1 point for walking, right? But then you start jogging, and all of a sudden you had to stop real quick. You get more points for a deceleration, an acceleration. Moving at high speeds. And the higher you jump, right? More points. Just think of that, more points you're getting, right? Versus walking and barely stopping and just standing still, the less points you get, right? So when I'm looking at very high, that is like very high decel. That is like between just think about 6.5 miles an hour or more, and you're coming to a complete stop, correct? Or acceleration, anything above 6 miles an hour, right? Or 6.5 miles an hour from the start, you just jump it, right? That's more points. That's very high, right? And that's how you get into the very high and high lows. And that's the best way to explain it. The less points you get is doing less work. The more work you're doing, you get more points. It's not rocket science. When you look at it, I know accumulated load, they're like, oh my goodness, they're at 1,000. Yeah, but out of that 1,000, was it because it was a 3-hour practice? Or was it because they were in very high and high? What were those 2 loads? Because that's what I want to know. Because when we're in a game, when we're in a game, that's what those young men are in. And that's what I have to make sure they're ready to do in a practice to resemble a game. It's like Michael Jordan, Kobe, the great basketball players that ever played, they always say practice must be harder than games. And that's what we're trying to do here.
And then Tessa, I would imagine, with your role, you're just all about the numbers, right? So what are you looking at and what are you taking away from those metrics?
I still try and keep it simple. So using still those 3 metrics, but we expand a little bit on that. So we can compare for each individual. We compare them to themselves. So if this practice, my accumulated acceleration load was 1,200 and I'm normally around a 700, that's high for me. And that's going to be more toll on me than it is for someone who's consistently doing 1,200, 1,300 in a practice. So we do a lot of individual comparison, and having data over the last several years has allowed us to track several years worth of finding averages and taking, standard deviations of those numbers. And then we also compare, are we 2 days out from a game? Are we 3 days out from a game? Are we the day before a game? And how does that impacting everything? So those are ways we take it a step further. I think that gives us more information. Again, still using just those 3 metrics.
And that's one of the. Go ahead, Coach.
And I would tell you, it's what she just said is very important because I stole her from Iowa State. Okay, I can't believe they let her go, but thank God they did. So when we first hired her, I was like, I look at the KINEXON data and I'm like, I'm comparing our guards to our guards, right? But then you have some special guards on our team that are super quick, super fast, and that's who they are, right? And then you have some guards that we need to play. They just need to work harder because they don't have those genetic talents of these other guards that we have, right? So I'm like, Tessa, can you help me? I need to know what it on 3 days out, 2 days out, 1 day out. Compare this guard to himself for the past year so I can see where he is and how much recovery he needs or different modalities he needs in the weight room versus a very genetically gifted guy that is that's who he is, right? He's going to get those numbers regardless. And I get to compare that genetic guard to himself instead of saying, oh, that the other guard just not there again, can't beat him. It's like, he's never going to beat him. Can he beat himself eventually? That's what we're trying to do. We're comparing himself to himself. So it's like in the weight room, might not be as strong as, Ronnie Coleman or Arnold Schwarzenegger, but we're comparing yourself to yourself. So can you get stronger each month, or we're getting stronger, more powerful? And that's how we're collecting the data.
And, and there's some great videos on your Instagram that when we start talking about action, I want to mention some of those, because you get to see that what you're talking about. You get to see it in action. So you practice what you preach. One of the things I did want to ask you about the data is, the NBA big on data, right? We've heard, back and forth on load management, this, that, and the other thing. But I mean, you're playing big boy basketball. You're in the Pac-12. I gotta believe you got some guys who can make it to the next level. Are they asking you about that as well?
100%. I mean, the guy, like I said in the beginning, we educated them first about what we're looking for, right? Because if we're just collecting and we're not telling them what to do, they're just gonna be like, man, why am I doing this? This is not benefiting me or the team, right? So if we go to them and we're like, hey, today you were at a 900, but out of that 900, we tag the defensive or shell drill, right? We tag shell drill. And I'm like, and shell drill, no wonder why in shell drill in a game, or we're in a game and you can't get from the 3-point line to 1 foot inside the paint because you're freaking half-assing it during practice. So now we can Bluetooth it to a iPad, and I could be down there while going live and say, listen, you need to go harder. Let's go harder. I need you to go harder, right? And that's why I said most of the time it's not about our guys for minute restrictions, though we did have some examples of that this year and last year, but it's more of, do you want to play at a very high level? Because if you do, it is hard. It's not easy playing at a very high level. And there's some guys that we had here at the University of Colorado that are still playing at a very high level that we have the data and we have the proof of. Look what they did at and in practice compared to what you're at. And it's like, I know he's special, but you can't tell me on this particular drill, you can't get there fast enough. So that's why we compare them to themselves to say, hey, you're not getting better. What do you have to do? You need to come in and do extra. This is what we're talking about comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges.
And Tessa, as a scientist, I mean, are you intrigued by like what an NBA player is doing? And then would you like to compare that? I mean, I know you like comparing, your players to each other, but does that give you something to work from too when you see what the NBA guys are putting out, and then you look at your guys and say, look, you're not that far off?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's fun to watch our guys that want to play professionally, learning about themselves, learning how do I optimize my performance? How do I optimize my recovery? How do I get the most out of a 3-hour practice? And to me, that's what's going to take them to be successful in the next level, the guys that are going to get there, because they have to be able to learn to optimize each of those areas. And so that's fun for me, trying to kind of bridge the gap between what they're doing here and then what they're going to do when they play professionally.
And one last thing on data, Coach, I'm curious. Does the data that you collect in basketball, does that spill over into what you're doing in regards to Olympic sports? Is some of that data the same, or is it completely different, or can you even compare?
It's hard to compare, right? Like we have women's basketball using KINEXON. We have women's volleyball using KINEXON. We have women's lacrosse using Polar Pro, right? And you can compare the accumulated load, but and we can compare women's basketball, women's volleyball, and we can compare women's basketball and men's basketball on the overall accumulated load, right? And to let them know, like, where are we at? Like, are you in very high? Where are you at, Steve? So me and Adam Ringler, we talk about this a lot, and Tessa's in there with us, and yes, we can compare easily, and that's why we evidently got KINEXON for our court sports, so we can compare and being able to discuss and make educational, ideas or not ideas.
It's guesses. It's educational guesses, right? I mean, that's what it is.
There's nothing. I'm trying to look for the word, but it is guesses, because like we're trying to take everything we have and making the best decision we can, which is evidently a guess, but it's a great guess when you have 3 people saying the same thing.
I mean, everything is it's an educational guess. We saw it in the Super Bowl, right? We'll take the ball first, right? Like in overtime. Whether or not he knew the rules or not, in his head, he's thinking he wanted the ball first because even if his thought was we don't score, they don't score, we score next, we win. And so he was thinking 2 steps down the road. Again, educated guess. He was just going and that's all we're doing here, which now leads us into insights, right? Because that's what we're using all of this data for, right? We're using it to create insights. And so Tessa, let's start with you on insights. Like, what are some of the things this information that you've collected, like some of those aha moments that you've had when it comes to insights that the data provides?
Yeah, I think we've had a couple of good examples even just this year of, again, what I said before, of trying to pull all the data to tell one big story. So especially when our guys get here in the summer, especially our freshmen, right? They're coming in and they get off and get running. And so we're really monitoring then of what are they used to? We don't know what they've been playing, what they've been doing in high school or what they've been doing in the spring leading into them coming in the summer. And so for us, we have good opportunities to, number one, educate. Here's why we're doing this. Here's what we're watching. And here's what you should expect as you get rolling in June. But a lot of that for us has been beneficial because we're able to pull the big piece together and say, here's what you need to do in the weight room. We have data to suggest this is what you need to work on. Here's your strengths and weaknesses. Here's what you need to do on the court. And then here's what you need to do to take care of yourself, because if you're not ready to go tomorrow, we can't get better tomorrow if you're not ready to go. And so that bit is a huge piece for us. And it's really exciting when it clicks and when I start to get all of these pieces go together. The weight room goes with the on the court, which goes with how you sleep. And that's for me how I like to bring this, again, full picture, because that's where it's really insightful.
See, that's the thing. Now we're starting to take the guesswork out of it. And Coach, I saw one of the videos that I watched of you. You said that you like to know how hard is too hard, right? And is that one of the major insights that you get from the data? Because you want to play fast, but you got to know when too hard is actually too hard.
Again, I say this all the time. I'm lucky to work with one of the best, if not the best, college basketball coach in the country. Let's see, he coached U19 USA this year. I think his experience and his head coaching ability to make decisions on the fly and not go too hard during a 1 day out or 2 days out. And the way we wanted to undulate it the first year, I'm just sitting there like, let's see if he does it right. I don't even know. Right. And at the end of the year, it was perfect. It was like high, medium, low. We're ready to go play the game on Thursday. Right. And I think that's where I'm lucky at, where I didn't have to go talk to him. And what do you want me to do? Hey, Coach Boy, another good job today. I mean, eventually he'd be like, get out of my office, Steve. So I think, working with him is special. Right now, we had some guys this year and last year, they stayed extra to shoot. Next thing you know, their numbers jumped up higher. And it's like, okay, in the first year, we're like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is going to do, but this is why we collect the data. And this is evidently why I brought Tessa in, because I'm like, okay, now what? Well, Steve, he's 30% over his normal 2 days out of a game. Okay. All right. So we started making recovery modalities and protocols of what they can do to get optimized for that next day of practice. Right. And it was, okay, this guy, he likes massages. This guy, cold tub, hot tub. This guy's going to go do cryo. This guy's going to do this. And it helped us out because now we have at least 4 or 5 different recovery protocols for each of our top 7 guys. And
Tessa, or both you can chime in. You don't have to name names, and you've mentioned a couple examples here, but is there always one that you always go back to and you're like, there's no way he would have been able to do that, or our team would have been able to do that if it wasn't for the data? Whether it was is it player availability's up, maybe it's somebody made it back to was injured and made it back to the floor a little faster than what might have happened in the past. But like I said, you don't have to name names unless you want to. But I mean, do you have stories like that?
I'm gonna go first on this one because I did actually a case study on this at the Pac-12 physicians. I forgot what it was called. And it was funny. I'm giving this, this case study, and a bunch of these physicians and stuff looking at it. It's like, what was this about? I'm like, do y'all understand? Well, we just found out how KINEXON can help us. We had a young who was about 6'8" guard we had. And he kept cramping. He cramped in 2 games. Coach Boras like, Steve, let's figure this out. What's going on? His hydration was perfect, right? His food was perfect. We go back 2 weeks prior to this, and we're looking at very high and high. Thank God this was our first year. And we're like, let's figure this out. Because if it wasn't for this, we don't know if we would be looking at that then, right? We didn't hit us in the face with it. We look back, we go, me, Adam, Tessa, we're all there, we dialing into it. And then I'm looking at it and I'm like, wait a second. His very high load, his average of a day the last 3 weeks of a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was the number 12. 12. We look at when we played Oregon, the first 8 minutes of the game, his very high load was 84.
Wow.
Full body cramp. People are like, well, what does that mean? I was like, layman's terms. I'm on the treadmill and I'm going 6 miles an hour Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for 3 weeks, right? And then I hop on the treadmill game day in the middle of the arena. 12,000 people watching me, and we crank that bad boy up to 20 miles an hour. I am going to go until my body fails. And that's what he did. And when we found that out, we're like, okay, what are we going to do? So at practice, that's when we learn to Bluetooth the iPad. I'm down there and I'm pushing this one player. If we're running 22s, he's going to be the first one. If he has to get to the corner, or snake it, whatever we got to do that day, that he was going to be the first one down there. And we started pushing them harder and harder. And yes, this was in the middle of the season, and harder. And guess what happened? I felt like a Sunday morning preacher back in the day, putting my hand on his head and saying healed, because he never cramped again. And everybody's like, I don't understand. I do. He wasn't going hard enough. That's what was going on, okay? And it wasn't rocket science. It was just like, hey, man, if we're going to play at this level, we got to train at this level. And that was the bottom line.
And I think back in the day, you remember, at least when I was playing, I played baseball in college. I played basketball in high school, played football in high school. But remember, it was, it's always, you got to make sure you rest. You got to be rest. You got to rest for game day, right? You got to, you got to do some things. And now, and even Tessa, I'll ask you, like, is that one of the biggest things to try and get coaches to understand, and if you have an example as well like that, because Coach, that's a great example of exactly what I was, asking. But is that one of the things to get coaches to understand, like, hey, they might need to go a little bit harder, and then some days you may have to back off a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I think we have another similar example. It has to do with cramping as well. One thing we always look at for our players is their load versus their subjective rate of perceived exertion. So how hard was the practice compared to what we see objectively with the load? And so with tracking that every day, you start to get a feel for, okay, man, this guy's load is much lower today, but yet he rated this super difficult. Why is that? And so that gives us kind of a ability to look a little bit closer. And we had an example of a player who would never cramp during practice, but would cramp in the weight room after. And so when you talk about player availability, it might look a little different than what you'd think of player availability. But if you can't finish a lift in the weight room, we can't get you stronger. We can't get you back for the next day. And so we were able to look at those numbers and say, listen, your load's not that high. It's feeling really hard. What is it? Is it fueling? Is it hydration? So we're able to pinpoint what is it? And then how do we address those behaviors? And again, that was the thing, that's player availability. We want you out there. And so it might not be doing less, but what strategies do we have? Is it splitting up your workout? So you lift and then you work out on the tour, or do you work out on the tour, refuel, rehydrate, and then lift? So there's ways to do it without just pulling a player and saying, sorry, you can't go today. You did too much yesterday. I think there's ways to be creative and use other strategies, but that really help keep our players available for the lift and for on the tour.
But that's a great point too, because this is what we're talking about. We're not only talking about what happens on the court during a game. It's all encompassing, and we're not just talking about during the season. This is all year round now, And the other thing that I wonder is the reaction that comes from whether it's the player themselves or the coaches to go, because I'm sure you probably have some are like, yeah, are you sure, and then when it works, like, what's the reaction that you get?
Go ahead.
I think it's buy-in, right? You get players that finally you see it click, you see it them understand. So, if this is a freshman we're talking about, the first day they'll wear their KINEXON, they'll tell you how hard practice was, right? They'll do it, and then they start to see, okay, this is helpful. This is helping my teammate. And then I love seeing when it clicks for them, right? I didn't cramp after I'd been cramping for 3 games, and Steve's telling me this is why, and he's telling me I know what's going on, and then you don't cramp, and then the look on their face like, I get it now. That's, I think, really fun to see.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think evidently this is, after what she just said, this is the reason I hired her, and it's great because I have a relationship with all these guys, right? They see Tessa at practice, so they know, when she starts talking to them, and to have buy-in, you have to be there for them, right? You just can't show up when you want to show up, right? So it's big for me, right? To have her there every practice and as many times as she can, and the guys are now buying in. But what I love about this is she can literally text me and say, Steve, can you watch this particular player, Tristan? Can you look at Tristan? He didn't sleep for 3 days. It was number 3, and he's always been 5. It's easy, and that's all I needed. I have so much other stuff to do while having a relationship with these guys. That's what her job is. I call up Tristan, hey, my man, blah, blah, blah. Look, I got a test I've been studying for. All right, you know what? Sleep in. Let's work out at 5 p.m. instead of coming here an hour before practice at 7:30. So instead of coming at 6, let's come at 5:30 p.m. so you can sleep in. And that's how we can make like great decisions working together. And it's not like, oh, look what I did. It's like, look what we did, because it takes a village to raise a family, right? And we're a big family.
But I mean, that's a lot of credit to you to buy into that, like Tessa says. So not only do you get buy-in from the player, like everybody's got to be bought in here, and it sounds like that's what's happening.
Oh, I think everybody's buying in. Again, I'll let the coaching staff, if I need to go to the coaching staff and say, hey, listen, this is what's going on, they're going to listen to me, right? But I don't I have a lot of coaches that say, Steve, you don't give them a report every day. I'm like, they are worried about X's and O's. They're worried about how we're gonna defend this team, what offense we're gonna run. When we defend, are we showing, we're plugging, we're going zone? What are we doing? They have too much to worry about. My job, and they trust me to go in there and say, hey, listen, Javon Hadley, KJ Simpson, during this day, pull them more. I need you to pull them more during the scrimmages, okay? So whoever has substitution that day, I'm talking to them, right? I'll look at Tessa, it's either this or this. And I'm like, okay, keep pulling them, or that's good. You're doing a good job today, right? And I think at the end of the day, I don't need to go up to him every day. And I know a lot of young coaches are like, I don't know how to explain it to the coach. Don't. All right. If the coach wants to know, then explain it to him, right? But if they're so worried about their next game, let them worry about that. You worry about what you need to worry about. And if it's a big issue, then you go to the head coach and say, Coach, we had a game. It was a tough game. Can I take the first 20 minutes of Friday's practice and actually do a recovery circuit? I know we usually do 10. I might need 25 to 30 today, Coach. And when you do that, he's going to say yes. Steve, you think we need that? Yes. He's going to give you that time. So I think that's where the buy-in comes in.
And so, Tessa, do you ever get to be the bad guy? Do you ever get to go to coach and say, listen, this, we need to pull? Do you, is that part of your role as well? Because I have to imagine that's probably not the easiest thing to do, right?
Like Steve said, we work for one of the best coaches in the country. So he makes it pretty easy when we have to ask him for things and we have to say, here's what we want to do. Like you said, we try not to cry wolf, right? So we don't say every day, got to pull this person back, got to pull this person back. And so
Tessa will
trust him.
Tessa will make me go talk to coach.
Yeah, see, I knew it. That's what I would do, Tessa. I'm just saying. Hey, one of the things, Steve, I wanted to ask you is, and I know your twin brother, you're surrounded by twins, Tessa. I am a twin. Our chief editor, Brennan Hale, he is a twin. And of course, Coach Steve is a twin as well. And Coach, I know your brother works with the Commanders. And do he's the head strength coach over there. Do you guys ever share, brothers talk, do you guys ever share insights? Or, I mean, he knows you got the power. Does he ever ask you about some things?
Of course. I mean, we talk daily about everything in strength and conditioning, right? I mean, he's my twin brother. I mean, so we talk a lot, right? And most of the time it's, hey, this is a new product I got, or hey, you ever saw somebody like, accumulated load looking like this and how it's fluctuating, right? And usually him and his sports scientist can hop on the phone with me and walk me through it and say, hey, this is what I found out, Steve, right? And now that, since we got Tessa, yeah, I mean, we get asked questions all the time, like, hey, how did Tessa make that sheet? And it was like, I have no idea. She codes, bro. I put it in crayon and she did it for me on coding. So I have no clue. And it's so we talk a lot. And I think having a twin brother, especially working at in the NFL and all the resources they have, it makes us better here at Colorado. No matter if you're having if I'm working with men's basketball or any sport, like when you got the best of the best, facilities and products in the NFL, I get to ask them what do you think would benefit me here, right? And I think that's where it benefits us.
And then Tessa, do you see some of those similarities too, even though it's professional football, and we're talking about men's college basketball or even women's college basketball? Do you see some of those similarities with the data and the insights?
Definitely. That's where I came from before I came here, was working in football. So there's a lot to me of crossover. Yes, there's differences, but there's a lot of insights you can bring from professional football, from college football to basketball.
All right, we did data, we did some insights, and then there's some action mixed in here. But Coach, I mentioned some of the videos that I saw of you on your Instagram where you're in the weight room with the, with the kids, and you're telling them, you need to be at a 0.6 or you need to be at a 0.8. If you don't get the 0.6, I don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean? I love how you're in there and you're just laying it out. And I love how and tie your shoes before you bench press. It's like you're in there, but it's like you're more than a coach, right? You're in there. You got that dad role too, right? You got the, you're really trying to line them up to win. And so what are some of those actions that you're taking? Like we heard some of it, whether it's the weight room or in a practice or even during a game, because you're on the bench during games. What are some of those actions you have taken over the years?
I just think, having that big brother role, right? And being able to, one, educate them, but most importantly, I want everybody to understand this, telling these young men the truth. If you don't tell these young men the truth, they're going to sniff you out. They're going to sniff you out. And it's hard to tell people the truth sometimes. Not everybody can do it. I'm telling you that right now. Not everybody can sit down a young man and say, you're not going hard enough. You're never going to make it if you go this way. You're never going to fulfill your dreams. And how you want to get your degree when you can't even keep that up, and you want to do extra in basketball, then you have more tutors, more this. You have to, it's discipline and it's habits. That's one thing I teach in the beginning. And I know what you just said about 0.6, 0.8 in here. We use velocity-based training through a company called Output. And I know a lot of people think, oh, he just wrote on a grease board. The workout's on their app, but it's easier to write on a grease board saying, hey, listen, if you're below 0.6, you went out last night. There's something you did that you're not ready. You studied all night. Your girlfriend broke up with you. Your heart is broken. I don't know what's going on, but something's not right, because the percentage I have it at, you should be smoking this, right? And if you get above 0.8, congratulations, you're doing something special. You've been sleeping. You've been eating right. You've been doing what you need to do to recover, right? So I think those modalities that we have evidently is going to help these young men. And if you educate them, then they're going to get better. They're going to get bigger, stronger, and faster. And that's why we use these analytics through KINEXON, through Output Sports, through Polar Probe for heart rate. I mean, to be honest, the one we use the most is KINEXON and Output though. I think every single day we use KINEXON, and when Tessa tags the whole team and sends them the text messages of how hard they went, we usually have some jibber jabber. I went harder than you. I told you I was going harder than you did, blah, blah, blah. And then some people like, the sensor's broken. I was like, no, your heart's broken right now, son. You just lost. I don't want to hear it. And it makes a competitive nature, right? And that's when we know, like, okay, good. And I know Tessa sends me a different one than she sends the players, so I can actually call the certain players up and say, you need this recovery modality. Hey, tomorrow, can you meet me here a little early? We need to go a little harder, right? Hey, when we get to the hotel, you had a tough practice. Let's do some stretches down in the team meeting room. So we use this. It ain't like we just collecting data to collect it, which, some people do. And I'm like, if you're not going to educate them, if you're not going to use it, the players will sniff you out. They will sniff you out. These are smart kids. They're going to say, well, I ain't doing this just to do it. Well, how's this benefiting me? How's this benefiting the team? How's it benefiting the coaches to coach better? Because if I'm not at my best, the players aren't at their best, right? For all of us to be at our best, everyone has to be at their best. And that's when you see how, great the basketball organization can work.
Well, fortunately, the KINEXON technology is able to talk to just about any other third-party technology that you want to apply. So thank God for that. But then it's good. But that, but those are that's some action, And Tessa, from your perspective, whether it's certain exercises you're doing in the weight room or certain drills you're doing, during practice or before a game, what are some of the actions that you have seen, come into play strictly because of the data and the insights that you've collected?
mean, he mentioned we send the numbers out to the guys every day. So every day we get to see, they get to see what's this number, what am I doing? And then, we bring that to the weight room, but also we do our force plate testing. We use Vault as well, another technology we work with. And so they get to see, here's my load every day. And then now I'm at force plate jump, and that's a competitive place for us as well to see, here's where you want your range to be. Are you above or below that? And that's where they start to paint the picture of hard day of practice, second hard day of practice, third hard day of practice for me as an individual. And I see that when I see my numbers every day. And then I go jump, and my jump is up. I slept really well this week. I really took care of myself. Or my jump is down. All right, you got 2 days to, recover, to eat, to do all the things you can control to be ready to go. So it's small action items, and it sounds so simple, but yet there's a lot of demand on our players. There's a lot, the schedule, they're playing a lot of games. And so sometimes these simple things like sleeping, eating, all of those make a huge difference.
When she says paint the picture, I want everybody to understand. You ever been in a barber chair, right? And you get in the fade. When he starts it, you're looking at, you go to a new barber, you're like, I don't think this dude knows what he's doing, right? And at the end of it, it's like, okay, he put everything together. And when she says paint the picture, it's like, okay, we have our KINEXON. If he's down 30% on his, or up 30% on his 3 days out of the game, right? He comes in and jumps, and he sees that he's lower, right? It's like, okay, we understand that. And today, let's do a recovery protocol because we need you to play, right? So let's not overexert you because you just went a plus 30 and you're below on your force plate jump. And we know that because of maybe ground contact time. Maybe you didn't jump as high. Maybe, your RSI is down significantly. So we know you're fatigued. And so this is what we're going to do. Instead of the workout today, you're going to come tomorrow. This is what your recovery modality is. So that is painting the picture. That is looking at the picture and looking at the barber that you did just showed up there, starts the haircut. You're like, oh, this looks like crap. And then all of a sudden at the end, you're like, oh yeah, I had faith in you the whole time. No, I didn't. Right? I ain't lying to you. I didn't. But now they see it and they paint the picture, and it's like, this is what you need to do today. Tomorrow you will feel better. Right? And I think that's where painting the picture comes up, and it makes it, it's poetry in motion. It's great. The players are going to buy in.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And one of the other things you mentioned is how this is a tool. And this is as we wrap up here, yes, it's a tool, but I'm wondering also, and this question is for the both of you, is it a recruiting tool?
Oh yeah. It's definitely a big time recruiting tool. I'll tell you what, once we had different recruiting presentations that I put together. All I did was know Excel, right? She came in, took it to a whole new level. And I'm talking about people across the country are like, yo, how'd you do that, Steve? And I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't know Excel, and I had to cut and paste all the time. I don't know how she does it, right? And she's a coder. Name one strength coach that's a coder. Like, he has teams, he's a director, he's overseeing other teams, especially men's basketball, which is 365 days a year, and then always can code. If you got that, let me know, because coding is different. Coaching is different, right? Coaching is about getting these young men to buy into this, right? To what Coach Boyle wants, to what we want here at the University of Colorado. So having a coder, I'm like, I don't know what she does, but she makes me look really good.
And But tell, have you seen it impact, recruiting? Whether whether it's at Colorado or even somewhere else. Is that a Tessa production right there?
This is a Tessa production right here. She's unbelievable. She's comparing NBA and NCAA norms. She has the normative data. She's comparing your Nord board. She's comparing your force plate, how quick you get off the ground, all on one page, and it's incredible. And I'll tell you this, I showed this at a presentation one year, and everybody's hitting me up. How did you do that? I put this in red crayon and said, this is how I want it, and it came out really good. But I'll let Tessa answer that question.
Hopefully it's had an impact, but I think the biggest thing is when the recruits come in, we say, here's what we're doing, here's what we're going to monitor, here's how closely we're watching this, and we show them the analytics. And I think as a player, they see, all right, they're taking care of me. And as a parent, the parents see, these coaches are going to take care of my kid. And they get to see it because year over year, Steve's done this with the way he's developed players in the past. So it's proven true in that. And then again, we have the numbers to back it. And I think that's been huge for our recruiting.
I would jump on board too, because we got the coaches to buy in on this, on the recruiting as well, right? So when the parent and the player sees the coaches that are invested in this as well, and they're the coaches like, we're going to develop you as a basketball player. We're going to develop you to be an NBA player in the weight room as well, right? So we're going to develop you on the court to get to what you want to do playing pro. We're going to do that in the weight room as well. And when it combines, like I said, it takes a village to raise a family. When we combine and we're talking the same language, I think that's when it becomes a very special place. And then at the University of Colorado, you know what you're getting here when you're sending your son here to play for Coach Boyle.
Okay, and I know I said that was the last question, but you're going to get a bonus question because you made me think of something else, Coach. Well, and you know, if you're at a smaller school, right? I mean, because like I said, you were playing Big Pac-12 basketball here. This is big boy basketball. Like if you're at a smaller school and maybe you don't have somebody like a Tessa. Or maybe you talk to coaches, you know, maybe Division IIIs or Division IIs or, you know, whatever. Even, I mean, let's go down to JUCO, whatever. You know, what would be a way to adapt to find yourself a Tessa? Do you go into maybe a math class? And I'll just, you know, I mean, off the top, you go into a math class and look for somebody. You know, what would you say would be a good way to find your own Tessa, you know, and still stay under budget?
First of all, I think KINEXON has a great dashboard at the end of once you upload it, that you can pick out one player and you can evidently see their 3 days out, 2 days out, and 1 day out, right? Now, you can't do it as special as she can, but you can see it, right? And you can make your own educated decisions of what you need to do for that player. Now, to find you a Tessa, I'm telling you this right now. Yes, I would go into a data analytic class, data science class, and say, hey, I need some help. I think the biggest thing in this field as strength coaches is for somebody to say, I need help. Everybody thinks they can do everything. And I always tell somebody, if you have a coach that tells you I can do everything, you better run fast. He's lying. He is lying to you. Okay. Like you need to find people that need to say, hey, I need help. And 3-4 years ago, that was me. I need help. I don't know. Like I see the sports science taking off and I'm looking at the KINEXON dashboard like this every day. And I'm like, what am I doing? What am I looking at? Right. I'm looking at 3 numbers, but how can I make it in my head? I had some, but I couldn't put it on paper. And I think that's when I needed help. And I think Adam Ringler helped find Tessa Mendoza. She interned for Adam prior, like 3 summers ago. And then I was like, yo, I need help, Adam. Can we hire somebody? He's like, yeah. And I was like, how is that, you know, smart young lady, Tessa? Can we get her back? And he was like, yeah. So then that's when I called her up and said, you know, how can I beat Iowa State? And she told me. I was like, all right, we got you. Let's go.
And Tessa, how about you? From your perspective, or even like your friends, the people that you talk to, maybe you know people you know that are still in school. I mean, do they see this as an opening, even if it's somebody who has no interest in sports?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I even talked to some of our players right now who are saying, hey, I took a coding class, or I did this, and tell me more about what your job, like what do you actually do, or what do you do behind the scenes, because they're interested in it. And I think that's really exciting. Of course, I'm like, yes, go into this field and you should do this because it's a blast. But yeah, you can find people with coding skills. You can find people with statistics skills, and then it's just applying it to this, and that's fun.
So we need to bring the strength coaches and the math majors together, right? Is that what this is? Or even the head coaches and the math majors?
I think the head coach is already doing that with their analytics in their room. I can promise you that. Like, hey, what is this guy shooting from the corner? What is he shooting from the wing? So they're already doing that. They've been doing that. And I think now it's like we're just taking it to the next level. So like I said, we can all be, you know, talking the same language of developmental players to make it to where they want to play. If that's 4 years, 3 years, or even 1 year.
Tessa's like the person in like Die Hard. She's the person who knows how to like crack the code on the safe, right? Which makes you Hans. I hate to break it to you, Steve, but you're Hans in this scenario.
We could find it, right? But we're like, hey, we need somebody to crack this code.
That's you. Have you seen Die Hard, Tessa? It's only the greatest action movie ever made. I mean, come on.
Tessa's only 26. She hasn't seen a lot of movies we've seen, Dave.
Okay, well, or even like Mission Impossible. The guy who Tom Cruise is always calling back to, who knows everything and can tell him everything. That's you, Tessa. Everybody needs a Tessa, right?
You're the one in the band cracking the codes to get us in the building, okay?
That's right. You got this has been great, guys. Both Tessa, Steve, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, and ask you a question or something, is there an easy way to get a hold of you?
I think my email would be the easiest way.
What is it?
It's Stephen, STEPHEN .Englehart, ENGLEHART @colorado.edu.
And Tessa?
Same thing. Email Tessa.Mendoza. That's TESSA.MENDOZA @colorado.edu.
Thank you so much for sharing your data, insights, and action with us today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Dave.
Hey, if you know a great coach who's out there doing great things and maybe has a Tessa, winning games and using data to get it done, we want to hear from them. We ask that, we'll ask them to be a future guest even on the podcast. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram @KINEXON Sports, or look for us on LinkedIn @KINEXON Sports and Media. Remember, we want you to innovate the game by collecting the data, getting those insights, and turning those insights into action. We'll see you next time.